episode 1 of Errata and FAQ. Dun, dun. Now, admittedly, this is new, I'm not very well known, so I don't really have a lot of questions. And such, we're gonna just have two today. Firstly,
are you the kind of NPC that gives us a list of questions we can ask, and we'll answer any question on that list as many times as we want, but won't answer anything else?
No, of course, and I would never dream of doing that. I'm definitely more of a recipe for jump kind of NPC, of course.
What are the worst campaigns/sessions you've played in?
Well, okay, so we've all had bad gaming experiences. It's just a fact of life. Now, I boil it down to 3. And then out of those 3, I boil it down to 1, but I'll give you guys the 3 just for the sake of padding. Now, the first one, my friend, we'll call him Ted. No, not the previous Ted, but Ted's just a random name to come up with. It was his first time DMing, and he hadn't really gotten a lot of quality game experience in. Just a lot of throw templates on a monster and let's have at it combat. So he was going into DMing without a lot of experience, and what he ended up doing, which is kind of what made me go, was it was the Demon Hunters universe from the Dead Gentleman Productions Demon Hunters, but he based, for the sake of plot and story, he just copy-pasted what he saw in the show Supernatural and just kind of shoehorned it in there. Now, as I said, it was his first time, so I don't really, I don't fault him on it. It was the first time he didn't have a lot of experience. I guess you could say the moral of that story is take some time, just gaming, get some quality gaming in before you attempt to DM. Have a firm, get yourself at least a basic understanding of storytelling and what kind of story elements go into which kind of game you're playing. I'd have to say my second worst game that I was ever in. It was a convention game, so if that didn't warn you already. Not that all convention games are bad, but convention games is where you have a lot of elements that you're not already familiar with coming in, so you don't really know what you're going to get. It's a big old surprise, kind of like life, right? Anyway, it was this game. The first problem with this game was that it was too many people. I think there was like 8, maybe more, but 6 is usually the maximum recommended amount of people in any one particular session, not counting the DM. So we had an overabundance of people, then we had a guy who really was not particularly skilled at running games. Couple that with the fact that he didn't know his monsters too well, and he was running out of a pre-made module, but even then he wasn't really doing it well. Couple that with the fact that he kept focusing on one player, maybe 2, but it was just this like one player and hangers on. So he kept focusing on the one guy. The one guy kind of instinctually grabbing on this, just kind of dominated the whole game. He became the central thing. And, maybe this one other guy that was just kind of in awe of him because he was a new player, and the guy who took over was a very experienced, he knew the system, he knew the rules. But he just dominated, and he kept talking and talking, and he is a bard. No, literally, he is a bard. He knows a bunch of sonnets, stories, ballads. He can play, and he usually goes to various Renaissance fairs, being a wandering minstrel. And he just ended up dominating the game. So the DM kind of, handed it over to him. I mean, he was literally railroading over the DM. He was in control, and he was this weird combination. I like my weird combinations and things, but generally I kind of tone it down. He was a satyr, bard, sandshaper, part-time avatar of the sun god. Egyptian sun god, Ra. And he just took over. Couple that with the fact that the DM was just running this game so incredibly slow, and so many players never got to do anything between the long bouts and the combat, or the long time running the combat, and him just and this one player running the game. I mean, at one point, I disappeared for like 20 plus minutes to go do some recording for my leaving the Hamlet convention video. That's when this happened. And I'm gone for 20 plus minutes. Dad and myself, the DM, we're gone 20 plus minutes, and we come back, and it's still not the same combat, the same turn that we left. Little that happened. The DM was slow, he didn't know what he was doing, and to tell you how bad this is, or how bad this is, my dad, he's been gaming for 25 plus years, and this is the one session he ever walked out on. Let that tell you something. Now, for the very worst game I was in, this was years back, we were playing 2nd edition, and it was about the term between 2nd edition to 3rd edition, so we were playing 2nd edition, incorporating some 3rd edition elements, but we hadn't made the full conversion yet. And the world was an interesting world. Metaphysically speaking, the gods of this world were basically made up of all the reject gods of the other pre-established pantheons. I thought that was rather amusing, especially when we found out. But the DM, we'll call him Jeffrey for the sake of protecting the ignorant. I mean innocent. I mean, you get what I'm saying. One, he never really kept any notes. Now, that on its own isn't a bad thing, but it can poorly synergize with other habits that he had. Now, basically, he was a DM, kept no notes, so we didn't really know exactly where he was taking things, but some big things. He had pet PCs, not GM PCs, not his own personal characters, but other players in the game that he favored, other characters that he kind of punished, and he had pet monsters. Not Pokemon, I think that was before the whole Pokemon craze really hit, but he had these pet monsters that he just loved and would never let anything happen to. Not to mention the way he built them is that nothing could affect them. When it came to the monsters, he basically took every kind of golem, mushed them all together, and threw some Shield Guardian on top. And basically what one creature was weak against, what one type of golem was weak against, the immunities from the other golems would, from the other golem types would cover it up. So you really had these monsters that you really couldn't do anything to. I mean, at one point we're in this fight with them, besides the fact that we can't really hit them very much, or for very much damage, or very often. How to put this? Two particular instances stand out. Now, this is back in 2nd edition, where the Dimension Door spell was literally a door that you step through and popped out another one, or at the very least, that's how we played it. I believe, if I recall correctly, that's how it worked. So, I was playing this mage, and there was this like dragon-shaped creature. He called them the Chunthor. So, you have these 3 Chunthor, one shaped like a dragon, one shaped like a slod, and one shaped like a centaur. And, we're having this hard time fighting them. We need to find some way to beat them, or at the very least contain them. So my guy, he sets up, he times it, and he gets the dragon-shaped one in a dimension door and opens the exit to the dimension door a hair's breadth from the entrance. So he's in this continuous loop. Now, that held him, that held him for a little bit, and my character was just concentrating. He may have been out of the fight, but he was keeping this one guy contained. However, he broke out. And how do you break out of a non-physical, pan-dimensional door? To this day, I still don't know, but the GM, or DM, or whatever, he basically said, he traces his claws along the edge, finds the edge, and pulls himself out. And I'm like, there's no physical substance to this door, but there you go. That was him. Another thing, but this is the one that really gets, ire, with memories, rankles one's ire, was we couldn't find any way to defeat this guy. We couldn't find ways to defeat these guys. So, well, we decided to try the more dangerous route. So, my dad was playing. He had a bag of holding and he had a dagger. Now, as anybody knows, you don't put unsheathed weapons into a bag of holding because it tears open the bag, and usually a rift to the astral plane occurs and things get sucked in. So, my dad, he took this dagger, put it into his bag of holding, tossed it directly under the creature, made his attack roll, got it right under. The DM didn't like that, so he instead said, he takes 15 points of damage, and there's a small little crater. And we were all like, no, these guys get sucked in. That's the whole reason you don't put blades in bags of holding. Astral Rift, they get sucked in, he should be gone. But no. DM's pet monster. So basically we end up having to run away from these guys. Now, that was just that was just one particular instance. Besides the fact that we couldn't, hurt these things, our main bad guy was a god. Literally a god. Now, on its own, that's usually an interesting premise, right? You're fighting up against a god, you have to stop his machinations, but usually there's some way for our mortal heroes to stop the god's plans and put him out where he can't do any harm for a while, or send him off away so he can form a new plan and come back later. But no, this god could not be killed. The only time he was ever injured was off screen and was by one of the Chunthor. Anyway, so fighting this god, took the form of a blue dragon, yada yada. We couldn't fight them, and what's worse, this god also had this giant mechanical dragon the size of a mountain range, made of indestructible metal. So we couldn't beat it from the outside. If we snuck in, we couldn't defeat it from we couldn't set double up and defeat it from the inside. So again, undefeatable. Now, I mentioned that he favored some players and punished others. Now, okay, so my character. We established that he was a wild mage, but he was dragon-blooded. Most he got was the ability to innately speak Draconic. Now I use it as an in to eventually do the whole dragon disciple route and eventually become a half dragon, but working towards it. And that's about as much as I got out of the guy. At one point we were all given like a magic item unique to us each, and I had just seen the Dungeons and Dragons movie. I'm sorry, I had this was earlier, and I wasn't quite aware of its flaws as much. I knew it was kind of bad, but I was trying to be more hopeful, about it. Call it the brain lesions of youth, if you will. And I said, okay, I want to have my guy. He makes a rod that allows him to control dragons because I thought it'd be cool. And he's like, okay, you can make a rod that can control gold dragons. Here's the thing: I never got to use the thing. You have the orbs of dragon kind of thing. Yeah, they're artifacts you use them sparingly. But if you're going to let somebody have them, you better expect them to use it, and you have to compensate for that. No, I got this rod, or my character got this rod, and he was never allowed to use it. One of the in-game rationales, if you were, was because he was on a continent. The main continent they were on, the alignments of the dragons were reversed. The chromatics were good, the metallics were evil. But he made this object, got this object, or made this object, it was a combination of the two, when he was on the continent on the other side of the world where the dragon alignments were normal and everything was properly color-coded for your convenience. So, because it was over there and he had it over there, he couldn't use it without violating his alignment. So, that's out the door. Another instance is we're being attacked by these forces, the big mechanical dragons flying above us, and we're about to get captured. So, most of it, we're thinking, okay, we'll split the group, and some of us will get captured, but the others will be able to go and get help. So my character, he has the water breathing spell, so he sneaks. So when the party agrees to it, and so when nobody's looking, none of the bad guys know nothing, sneaks in. He does water breathing on himself, and he tends to travel through the riverways. That way he doesn't have to travel above land and have people notice him. So my guy goes off. Cutscene, the people are being brought on, and then what happens to my character? Off camera or off screen, without notifying me, my character's plopped in and quickly air dried with a dose of static electricity just to top it off. No nothing, no playing it out, getting captured, no chance for me to escape, just bam. I'm there, you're captured, let's move on to the next scene. So there's that, and also, at one point, because this world was made by a bunch of reject gods, there were spots in creation that was just the raw potential bits of creation that could be shaped into something. Now, Theos in this particular thing had, mastered the use of this. They take this raw creation to form crystals in their skin and do kind of a Spider-Man web thingy with vines. Now, they said, okay, so our party was there in them, and they said, okay, so we'll give you a try. We don't think you'll be able to do anything because you're not elves, ha ha ha. And you're not trained like us, ha 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 ha. But here, give it a try. So a couple of party members try. They just go in and grab. Me, I have my character, okay. He's a magic user. He's used to visualizing and shaping, the more esoteric energies of the universe, right? So I have him reach his claw in, because he was half dragon at that point. And I said, okay, he visualizes and imagines and forms with his hands what he wants. And pulls a speck out, and it's not even a shape; it's just a speck of creational bit. While one of the characters that he favors says, "Okay, I try that too," and he pulls out a fully formed thing, and I'm like, and this is the smallest, pettiest of it, I guess, but or petty. I don't know if it's petty on my case or his case, but my guy's a half dragon. He doesn't have a familiar. It's like, okay, I want to try to get a familiar. And I'm half dragon. I want something a bit thematically appropriate, so I'll try to get a pseudo dragon familiar because you can do that. And he was high enough level that it wouldn't necessarily be unexpected for him to have that. So he says, "Okay, I'm going to make some incense and then do the ritual to summon myself a pseudo dragon familiar." And he says, "Okay, roll the d4." It's like, "It'll take you 4 years in game time to make it." 4 years? 4 years in game time? He's like, "Yes." I'm like, "Fine, whatever. Let's just going." And at one point there was like this other thing. I forget the exact specifics of it, but there's this instance, something really bad happened to my character. I'm like, "What? I don't even get a saving throw to try to, resist, dodge, or whatever." He's just like, rolls the dice, not even looking at it, says, "No." With a face like that. So that's how he punished other characters. Then there were other characters that he played favorites with. One of which was this halfling fellow that my dad was playing. He was a bard, He was a bard. He was a very cheery halfling. Eventually became a bit less cheery as time went on, but there you go. Character development. And when I say he favored this character, the prime example that comes most readily to mind is the fact that he was a bard. He had a very specific set of abilities, and he had a limited number of spells, but he decided, the DM's like, "Okay, I like you. You can have full mage progression while keeping your normal bard stuff." So he became overpowered. Then there was this other character, I forget exactly what he did for her, but I think she was the one that was able to fully shape everything out of the creation bits. But he was like the favorite character. He was in a weird romance, not romance kind of thing with one of the NPCs, the Red Dragon, who traveled along with the party, Ash Talon or Ashton. And his character just became the star of the show, and eventually everybody else just kind of, except for the bard, just kind of got pushed to the wayside. Now, we never actually finished this, because eventually we had a falling out with this guy, but it was the worst campaign I was ever in. Unbeatable monsters, character favoritism, character punishment for no real reason, and it was just really, really frustrating. So, yeah, that's the worst campaign I've ever been in. I guess you could say the moral of the story for the second 2 bits is, players, be willing to share the game. DMs, be willing to share the game, let the game be shared with other players. What else can I throw on top of that? Well, that's the moral, really. Share the game. It's a cooperative game. You're there to have fun as a group. Cooperative storytelling. Meet the challenges, defeat them. Let the players be heroes. Also, know exactly what you're doing when you're running things. Know the system rules, DMs. Please, know the system rules. If you don't know I'm not saying memorize the rules, but at least have a firm working knowledge of it. So yes, moral of the story, share the game, because it's a cooperative game, and know the rules. Two very important things for any DM to know. Well, that's it for now. I hope I get some more questions in the future, and I can answer some questions that you guys want. Just send the email if you have any thoughts, questions, or suggestions, and I hope to see you next time on Errata and FAQ. Fare thee well, my lovelies.